Walking the trails clockwise is recommended, except for the giant trail. By walking the Piwakawaka Trail counterclockwise, I discovered that there's a great lookout, a very short walk from the car park. The downside of that is that there were people hanging out there. I walked on a Saturday, yet again, somehow, and there was also a large group of loud kids. I sat down and had a Viber chat until the guys left the lookout. They apologized and wished me a good afternoon. The sounds of children receded into the distance. I proceeded in relative peace. The Piwakawaka Trail is the shortest in Tamata Park. It's named for these cool little birds. They're really friendly little guys. They seem to come up and check you out, say hello. I didn't see any of them on this particular day, but many other birds stood in. There wasn't much wind, and our feathered friends were singing. I'll try to shut up for some of their best songs. I'm taking this opportunity to talk about what New Zealand has done right in terms of COVID response. Something I maybe haven't done enough. New Zealand handled COVID well for all of Alpha. There were things that weren't handled well, but on the whole it was a huge success. While the life expectancy of the world went down over this time, New Zealand's life expectancy increased, more than any other country in the world. That's a pretty good metric. One key to this was a clear plan and regular, clear updates. This helped most New Zealanders get on board and cooperate towards a common goal. Credit has to be given to the government for good leadership. A lot of people worldwide would have loved to have had leadership like this from their own governments. Credit also has to be given to the people of New Zealand for good teamwork in working toward this common goal. A lot of people worldwide would have loved to have had their fellow citizens on the same page. New Zealand also took care of people. People weren't left hanging. They were given support if they couldn't work. Businesses were supported if they could keep people employed. This helped people cooperate. Helping people in need is something that New Zealand did before COVID. I remember the message going out during the brief warning period before the first lockdown. If you're going to need money to get you through the first days of this, call us now. This is all very good. This is all, has anyone in the world done it better? Good. There was and continues to be a perception that violations of COVID rules are not enforced. That's bad. The more informed know that rule violations are actually enforced inconsistently. The best example I can think of is the rich couple who had their court date fairly recently. The judge's son was fined $750. A mark on his partner's record would have affected her legal career, so she simply wasn't convicted. This couple crossed the Auckland border to go to Queenstown for a holiday while Auckland was locked down. A woman who escaped MIQ to attend her husband's funeral spent 2 weeks in jail. That's Pug Fugly. The other great, but too close to the car park lookout, is a very short walk away. So why not have a quick look? There's a police officer who abused his power to illegally cross the border during lockdown. No one expects there to be any repercussions for that. I noticed that there are both light green and dark green arrows now, and decided to have a quick look over the new Tipuna Footstep trail as well. This seems like it'll be more interesting when all the stuff they planted grows in, but I'll probably check it out before that time. There were surprising mistakes throughout Alpha. The earliest that I remember is letting two women leave MIQ early for a funeral. They were told to go straight to the funeral and not to stop along the way. They were not accompanied or tracked in any way, as they drove 8 hours from Auckland to Wellington. Before even leaving Auckland, they stopped to meet someone. They stopped again along the way. Then, their test came back positive. There seems to be a lesson here that the New Zealand government seems to be incapable of learning. Managed isolation and quarantine was recently shortened to 7 days, with 3 days of home isolation immediately after. The DJ Dimension, a.k.a. Robert Etheridge, from the UK, has already provided another demonstration of why you don't just trust people like that. By spending his home isolation at various restaurants and clubs in Auckland before testing positive for the Omicron variant. The government has announced that he won't be charged. They say they want people to come clean and cooperate after, more than they want to deter rule breaches via punishment. In spite of relaxation of MIQ rules, many New Zealanders have found it impossible to get a spot in MIQ, which prevents them from returning home. New Zealand's border is still closed, for now. But Dimension was allowed in and given an outstanding opportunity to introduce Omicron to the community of New Zealand. Best I can tell at this moment is that Omicron cases in the community remain in the single digits. Business travelers were found to be exploiting a flaw in the booking system and booking themselves multiple spots in MIQ. Spots in MIQ therefore went unused, while ordinary New Zealanders were stuck overseas. Apparently this flaw has been addressed. A scheme offering visas to wealthy foreign investors that was suspended due to COVID has resumed. New Zealanders expect that this will place even more strain on the MIQ system, which is still preventing ordinary Kiwis from returning home. That's all pretty Pug Fugly. This trail crosses the full length of the Rotary Grove. This is the younger of the two redwood groves in the park, planted by the Hastings Rotary Club in 1974. There was an MIQ hotel with an outdoor recreation area separated from a public walkway by nothing more than a chain-link fence. That walkway was never closed to the public. The situation wasn't addressed even well into Delta. A travel bubble with Australia was discussed from early on in the pandemic. Australia did well compared to the rest of the world, but the travel bubble kept being delayed due to huge outbreaks there. New Zealand eventually went through with it anyway, and almost immediately, a visitor from Australia tested positive upon arriving home. Miraculously, no one in New Zealand was infected by this visitor. If I recall correctly, it was Delta. Alpha was kind to New Zealand, and New Zealand got lucky on many occasions. Of course, one of the biggest mistakes was having no plan for Delta until just before the country's first case. The government was still relying on the same plan it used for Alpha. Then, after Delta hit, they had no plan other than elimination. They didn't think about what they'd do if elimination failed. Then there's the positive Delta case that the health system lost track of, resulting in Hawke's Bay residents who were at the same locations not being warned of it until 8 days later. Somehow the number of active cases here in Hawke's Bay still remains very low. New Zealand's vaccination rate is now over 90%. 93% of the eligible population is now fully vaccinated, and the booster program is underway. And it actually seems that people have finally stopped obsessing over anti-vaxxers, or at least cut way back. These fossils look like scallops. Scallops, oysters, and brachiopods can be seen throughout the park. Using fossils like these, archaeologists date the marine sediment lifted up to form the park at between 2 and 3 million years old. It's more than 3 weeks since Christmas, and if there was going to be any surge related to holiday travel and gatherings, we'd expect to see signs of that by now. Omicron is here, but has yet to spread, as far as we know. At this moment, it seems that New Zealand's overall COVID response still has to be considered wildly successful. The good early work is still paying off, deep into Delta. The mistakes made, and then made again in many cases, have been extremely frustrating. But for now at least, in terms of COVID cases and deaths, we could even argue that it's going almost as well as New Zealand's response to Alpha. Here's hoping it continues. Happy New Year. Best wishes for a safe and prosperous 2022. Talk to you soon.